happening, YouTube? It's showing me as Dot coming back to you with another video. And today marks Comp Cam number 4 with our second teammate on the Vector Sigma squad, and Vin, the voice of VS. Man, yep. I applaud and I look up to your well-spokenness.
Thank you.
You and Richard Wyatt are gonna have to have a speak off, because you guys are the top 2 most well-spoken guys in the Transformers community. I applaud that, and I always try to. I notice you don't say a lot, and that's one of the biggest things. I have like a deep, powerful voice, but I don't have the. I do the ums a lot, and I always applaud you guys and look up to you guys for not doing that as often. So definitely shout out to you for that. But overall, you're coming on this channel today to talk, some competitive gameplay, and get to know you more. And I appreciate you for being on. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too, Stefan, given all the real life stuff.
Yeah, I'm all right overall.
Yeah, everything's pretty much in that boat of as best as we can do at the moment, right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of that thing. But we do have a lot of Transformers to keep us excited, though.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, we all keep our spirits up by talking about different things. You cover certain things with the team, and certain decks that you like. I cover certain things, and etc. So, absolutely. You know what? Without further ado, because I could easily babble on and not ever get into the questions. So
trust me, I could do that too. I have a tendency.
Well, you know what? Nick said the same thing in the last one. Shout out to Nick Wyman. We both do a lot of talking as well. So never put us in a room, all 3 of us together, because we'll probably never leave.
Absolutely.
All right. So starting out with the first question. When did you start competitive card gaming?
It was actually years ago, and it's one of those annals of time, 1996 or so. So I started playing Magic before that, and it was in Revised, which was their 3rd set, like their base set stuff, around that time. And then I started getting more competitive because there was a sealed deck event that was local, and I was just a kid at the time. And then that store fell apart, and we moved to the next store, and they preferred to draft. So I drafted for years and years and years. And draft is kind of an inherently competitive format. Like, you can definitely mess around with it, and you can mess around with constructed, but I feel like if you sit down with a draft table with 7 other people, like, you're in it as a cutthroat, and there's really no option. So it's very much, I was a guppy thrown in with the sharks, and I've had to learn the whole thing even as a kid. And then from there was just, I competed in everything else. It was natural to compete in cards too.
Okay, cool. All right. So when you jumped into Transformers, how did you get into Transformers coming about? Because I know Dan's story, I know Scott's story. Well, kind of know Scott's story. I know a lot of people that have talked your story. I don't think I've heard yours. So how did you get into the game?
Into TCG? Well, I was a Transformers. Transformers itself.
Yeah.
I got a lot of garage sale Transformers, like, as a kid. So we were not, we weren't destitute, but I would classify it as, not all that wealthy, we'll say poor, growing up. So it was hit up garage sales over the summer. My mom would take my sister and I, and the thing was, we'd drive by in our station wagon around the neighborhood looking for garage sales, and every garage sale was find things that are colorful, because that's where the kids' toys are. And it happened to be Transformers and G.I. Joes. So I got a really early start in Transformers.
Yeah.
And then I had been chomping at the bit. Like, when Hasbro acquired Wizards way back when, and it was just, this felt like an inevitability, whether it was G.I. Joe, whether it was Transformers, whether it was whatever property. I was just waiting for the card game, and it finally, decades later, shows up. And it was very much one of those no-brainers where I told my wife, and she turned around and looked at me and goes, "So how many cases are you buying on day one?" kind of thing. I'm like, well, as long as you're cool with it,
right.
I'm gonna get some cards.
Got that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, my wife plays a lot of card games and competitively with me as well. Yeah,
that's nice.
Like,
she's your partner.
Yeah, I didn't mention it before, but the year that Transformers actually came out, we were at that Gen Con. So I told her, look, I'm going to get in line. I need you to get in line. If anybody else we know, get in line, because we're going to pick up all the promos.
Right.
And after we picked up the promos, we went and played in Lightseekers Nationals. And she top 8'd, I top 4'd. I misplayed horribly in the top 4. Should have made it to the finals, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, but, it's all good.
She definitely understands and was very much willing to get into it. It's just, Transformers isn't really her thing, so she never really latched onto it.
Okay.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, it's all good. Okay,
right.
Cool. Okay, so right into the nitty gritty when we're talking about decks, we're going to jump right into it. When assessing
Yeah.
deck building, how do you go about assessing deck building? Now, if you could actually be a little bit more specific than I've asked in the past, it's not any of their faults, any of my previous guests, but 6 battle pumps. Like, I try to make sure, I don't know why, I think ever since when it came to double prime, there was 3 bigger they are, 3 leaving the battle.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Pumps.
Yeah.
Like battle pumps specifically, how much direct damage. I know that's sometimes based on the deck, if the deck has inborn direct damage in the characters and things like that. But overall, besides the easy, well, is it orange? Okay, 3 piece of tyranny, 3 improvised shield. That's it. And then same with checkpoint and handheld blaster. Other than those, how do you assess deck building?
I am very much there's the little man. Shout out to the little guy.
Yeah, shout out.
I don't know if he'll make it into the final cut, but shout out to the little man.
Oh, no, he'll be on it. He'll be
awesome.
On it. All over the place, so I'm going to add him in. Yep.
Yeah. So when I'm building stuff, I'm very much... All right, let me take a step back. This is the funny way to describe it. I'm the insane painter type, if that makes sense. So it's quite literally, I got buckets and buckets of, in this case, cards with picture paint, and I'm just slinging it at the canvas, trying to see what happens.
And you end up with, I got to ask you real quick, sorry to cut you off, but you end up with 50 plus cards when you make a deck?
Every time. It might be more than that. It'll be like 80 cards, and then I got to cut it back. I mean, it depends. For certain things, certain strategies, and I have had the other end where it's, I have this idea. I got to get this idea out of my head, and that's kind of the way I look at it. I go into Fort Max, I just start throwing things in there.
Thank God for that. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I just start throwing stuff in there, and it makes it a lot easier than, physically building it at the table behind me. So I'll go into Fort Max and just start slinging stuff in there, fitting the appropriate theme, obviously starting with the staples, and usually it'll somewhere between 55, 60 cards, and then I ratchet it back. All right, I don't really need those. I don't really need this. This doesn't fit the theme. This card is actually terrible. I don't know why I had it on the list to begin with, that sort of thing. But it's for, I guess, to your specific question, when we're talking about like rules of thumb and that sort of thing, in the past, it was very much, I didn't want more than 6 blanks. I wanted as much burn as I could stuff in. So it was always, almost every list started out with, say, 3 one-shell stands sort of thing.
Right.
But over time, as we've gotten closer, a lot of those things have started to fall away because of the ever-growing card pool. And it feels as though we can very much build, instead of just a pile of good stuff, it's, okay, there's this niche card that actually supports this strategy. So Fusion Borer, for example, is really strong in general overall, but it's maybe outshined in particular builds by other weapons. But it shows up in a lot more things more often for me now.
Right.
I can't think of any others off the top of my head that are in that same boat.
That's
but
cool.
A lot of,
I was just kidding. It's all good.
Yeah, a lot of the builds that I've been working on lately are, I mean, as I said, I have to get ideas out of my head, or otherwise I keep thinking about that deck. So for a while, I was really hung up on Windsweeper. So it was every Windsweeper build I could come up with. Every other month or so, I go through my Soundwave period where I'm like, oh, I have this idea for Soundwave. He'll work. He never works. Spoiler alert. It never works. That sort of thing. But other specific rules of thumb, it's got to be, again, as much burn as you can pack in. Now we have a lot more options
than ever before. Yeah, it's a little crazy.
Now, I tend to lean into, and this is something that I've definitely discussed with you and the other guys on the team, that I kind of look at it as, do you want your flips to matter? So what's the most important step of the turn for your deck? Is it your play action cards? Is it your play upgrade cards? Is it your attack step? If it's attack step, then I'm leaning heavily into appropriate pip color. So like that orange deck, not to beat the dead horse like you're talking about, but yeah, you got to have your double pips. You got to have a ton of oranges, somewhere around 36, 38 pips, not cards necessarily. Sorry, it's dry, very dry here. So, but I feel for me, a lot of the decks that I build, I want to ensure that your combat flips, because you're always participating in combat, whether it's on offense or defense. And knowing that, and again, this is just a me thing. I know Scott and Dan tend to lean into, they can crunch the numbers or have a feel for it. For me, I need to know when I attack, I'm hitting 2 oranges, or 9 times out of 10 hitting 2 oranges, or defending for 2 blues. So as a result, my list will often be so monochrome that way, with, again, very few off color pips, where it's white pips, nulls, black pips, whatever, the bare minimum, because otherwise I guess the most succinct way to put it is you're not guaranteed to draw any given card, greens aside.
Right.
So I want to make sure I am participating in combat every turn. I want to make sure that combat step is always relevant in the direction I need it to. So that drives a lot of it. And I kind of start out almost 100% orange, 100% blue, and then ratchet it back as I realize, oh, I need this other pip. I need this blank. I have to include this, counter espionage if it's in something else to try and address certain scenarios. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. So thanks for explaining that. So when it comes to mixed decks, like the General Prime, that mixed deck, were you not a fan of that because it was kind of both sides? Even though
to this day, every once in a blue moon, Scott and I, when I say we get into it, we're not like yelling at each other, but we're busting our chops about when we call back to Gen Con, because I didn't like that deck, but I also, going into Gen Con, was not settled on a deck. So it just so happened that in my own despair for trying to find something, we stumbled on Blaster, and Scott was a huge component of building that deck. Right. So this is one thing that I told him I would always say whenever it came up. Scott was a big part of building that deck. Like, everybody always assigns it to me, but it's just as much his. But he was hell-bent on playing that. Pretty much everybody else was. I wanted to, but it was one of those leading into it, I just didn't feel comfortable with it. And
it boils down to, in the end, it's not just, this deck's broken. Well, you're not going to pilot it as well as you could if you're not comfortable with it.
Exactly. And then the decision points for that deck, I felt, obviously, they were more complicated than Blaster. Like, it's just plainly, Blaster was pretty simple. It's flip cards, get in there. The Prime deck, because of focus and a number of other things, you had to actually calculate out certain turns. For me, I was just going for the high score. So it made my life a little easier.
I gotta say, it's pretty much just like Insecticons, and I was a little bit of a hypocrite in loving Blaster, but disliking Insecticons. But I think the main problem with me was, if it was Blaster first, I would have hated Blaster just as much, because
Bugs were around for a long time.
Yeah, Bugs came out first, and so it's just whoever came first, it is what it is. Even though I ain't red, so that's a little more biased towards that side because I love the Autobots more than Decepticons.
Gotcha.
But my problem with the Insecticons that I'm notorious for, like, hating Bugs. A lot of people clown me about it, whatever. And
it's allowed. Everybody's got those pet peeve decks.
Yeah, but it's just the aspect I didn't like about it the most. Not that kickback flip 1,000 cards. Not that barrage and they played one shot stand and Swarm was such a BS card, aka really good. It was. Too many people I've heard say, I'm going to pick this deck up and go to the dark side because they think that's going to be an easy win. Don't want to make this about me. You can go check my video out 10,000 videos ago. Why I explain the same thing in more detail there. That's also, by the way, the first time I revealed my new intro. So,
nice.
Just overall, I just can't stand it for that. Now, Blaster, I was more happy about Blaster because that was the deck to really kind of take out Bugs because of Ramhorn. I know Ramhorn was a very important part in that with his force field effect or being able to draw in the force field and play it. So so shout out to the Blaster deck. And overall, it is a very strong deck. It is kind of brain dead in a sense, but I think it's still, I don't know, screw Bugs. That's
it's allowed. Yeah, Bugs. I don't think too many people. I mean, I know people love to bust your chops, but I don't think too many people disagree. Bugs had a very long reign, and it is. I think somebody busted out the raid because they've been absent for a while. Yeah. I just don't like any deck. So this same thing will go for any deck in the future that people just think they're going to pick up and have an easy. If I didn't hear that as often as I did, I wouldn't trip about it. But the fact that I'd never heard somebody say, 3-Wide Prime just won an event. Okay, I'm going to pick up 3-Wide Prime and get easy win. You know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't like they just thought that they had a better chance with the deck that won a tournament. No, they have a better chance, they think, with Bugs because it's 4-Wide and this guy or that person saying, So I wonder, to be honest, Bugs would not really, for obvious reasons, is not competing in the meta now, but say Bugs could, but it didn't exist in Wave 1, it came out now. I wonder if people would feel the same. The only reason I say that is a lot of the game is much more complex than people think, and I think why they picked up Bugs and said, I'm going to win a bunch of games with it is because it's a wide aggro deck. And at that stage in the game, Wave 1, nobody knew the things that we do now about how the games break down as far as, wider aggressive decks having an advantage against taller aggressive decks, which seems obvious now that we know it, but at the time nobody had stated that.
So hindsight thing. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's why I wonder if it would break out the same way. Obviously, Bugs would need a lot of help to be able to fight horrible left and right, but that's another story.
But you know what? Then again, I do appreciate Bugs because Bugs helped me appreciate direct damage.
Yes.
Like, especially with Scrapnel. It took me a lot longer, I'm not going to lie, on my own to figure that out. But then hearing the podcast way early on, the Vector Sigma podcast about direct damage, I understood that as soon as they said it. Coming from me, direct damage isn't literally a thing like that in that sense, but like just there's some things that are related, and I understood that like immediately. I was like, okay, that's cool. Because there are things like trap cards that get rid of like monsters instead of you having to attack with the monster to get rid of the monster. You can like kill that monster out of battle and then like attack your opponent's life points directly instead.
Gotcha.
Like
that. Same sort of
thing. Like a trap card is the same thing in that sense. So I understood that immediately, and that's why now it's my favorite aspect.
Gotcha.
But you know what? Speaking of favorite aspects, that's a perfect segue. What is your favorite aspect of the game? And again, trailing back to mine is direct damage. So whether it's like the battle phase or battle pumps or a certain character or whatever, in terms of.
So I guess there's two answers. One is because I'm such a huge Transformers fan. I mean, you can probably see it in my pointing the right way. Over there, there's some other detoffs. I've been
Usors or those what kind of Power Rangers? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, exactly. No, the Power Rangers are upstairs. Those are my kids. So.
Yeah.
It's funny. We'll digress about Power Rangers later. But so obviously, like, I can say the easy answer is like I love Transformers. My favorite characters have made it into the game. Now my next hope is that they get reprinted as better characters, but that's another discussion. As far as the actual gameplay mechanics, and this is going to sound, I hope this makes sense when I say it.
Okay.
It's because it kind of is generic and goes for a lot of card games, but I feel that it plays out differently in Transformers. And then I have a follow-up one that's good for it. One is making consistency out of inconsistency. It's very easy to look at this game, especially people who don't play, and go, oh, well, it's just all variants. You're flipping top cards of your deck. But every card in the deck functions, going back to my earlier discussion about starting out all orange or starting out all blue, to ensure that it's 100% of the time or as close to 100 that it's doing X. And then in those other scenarios, you have flexibility in Y. So that's one of the, and to me, playing other games, that was always there. And obviously, if you jump to games outside of Transformers, that is an aspect, but it feels so much more salient and it feels so much more relevant in this game because a single incorrect flip, a single, whether that's actual flip off your deck, a flip one of your characters, a single missequence on plays can spell disaster so early in the game that I could see where people would find that off-putting, where it's so unforgiving, but I personally appreciate it, where it's every time I look back at the game, I go, I lost because of that, or I won because I did this and my opponent did that, and therefore the dominoes fell this way.
Right.
So that you can build the inertia and then get there. It ended up, I'm going to rephrase that. It ends up being more deterministic than people would think on the outset, and that's something that I can really appreciate because I played so many games where it's just okay, and not to bash Magic, but I played it for like 17 years.
Yeah.
Everybody loves to harp on mana flood or mana screw, and and one of the common counter arguments is that it balances the game. If you have a bad hand and you can't play anything and I win, well, it's just as likely to be reversed the next game and it evens out. The problem is at the end of the day, you don't play enough relevant games where the players didn't make purposeful decisions that change the outcome of the game. It was just, all right, it was random odds. Yes, that's not all the time before anybody freaks out listening or watching this, but Transformers, I feel, although it gives the appearance of that, really is much more skill intensive than people realize. I continually, even doing the podcast with Scott and researching decks and all the stuff with Vector Sigma, working with you, Stefan, playing in these events, like every time I go back and review an event, I go, well, of course that's what happened because of these reasons. And I couldn't always do that for other games.
I have I gotta digress for a second and You reminded me of a situation of like things where I'm playing 41 cards. I think I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but I know it's small.
Yes.
And I'm not gonna lie, that's a infraction on my part because I'm undecisive in the end. I'm sitting there the night before an event, and this even goes for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm like looking at my deck, and one of my downfalls and one of my things I need to work on is I'm a big, this looks really good on paper guy. And I won't even test it, and I'll just go into an event and then I'll learn afterwards. And
it's a hard way to learn.
Oh, tell me about it, man. When you get to the event and you realize how much time you wasted going to the event unprepared. And I didn't do that often, but I did that, And even in this game, it's like, man, that deck looks really good on paper. This list looks really good how it is. But I'm at 41 or I'm at 42. I can't figure out what to cut. Okay, maybe I can figure out this one card to cut. Damn, I can't figure out anything else. So I just leave it how it is.
Yeah.
Now, just like what you were saying, in 100 games, that's going to matter.
Of course.
It's going to sincerely matter. But depending on how many cards you flip, you don't just flip 2 cards per turn. Sometimes your characters have bold, so you're going to flip more cards. Sometimes you flip a white icon, so that's going to flip more cards. So the card you draw is just so beyond random, is beyond like just I don't know exactly the word I want to use, but it just doesn't matter as much, unless I'm playing, 100 games in a day. Now, we play a good bit of games, like at the Energon Invitational. That's the most we've ever played in terms of a long haul. But, So I agree, like from what you're saying, it just reminded me in that sense of why I play 41 cards in certain decks, especially like Shockwave. Sometimes I don't mind playing 41 because he draws me a card for free. It's not that aspect is on top of, the amount of flips I'm flipping for guys that have NA bold or the white icon I flip, etc. So one thing I want to digress about. But
I hear you on that.
Metroplex. I know you're also a Metroplex guy as well. Now, your opinions on him potentially now versus like when we have options like Fortress Maximus. He has a lot more tools than he did way back in Wave 2.
Absolutely.
Really well at that one event. What do you feel about Metroplex?
So it's funny. I think the event that I met you at was when I was playing Metroplex way back in Wave 2. So
I asked that one game. I think we had a long game.
And he's whooped up on me every time since.
But I got my one win with the Metro. But Metroplex is funny. I actually did sleeve it back up. I think it was after we officially got the set and I had cards in hand.
Okay.
I was testing out Fort Max before that, testing out Metroplex afterwards, because as you said, he got a whole bunch of tools.
Yeah.
The challenge here is you still have the same weaknesses where going first, going second is really important. Yeah. So going back to what I was saying, I love about the game, it's Fort Max and Metroplex both function in similar capacity where it's very much Jesus take the wheel because you flip a coin, you roll a die. If you roll poorly and go second or go first on a certain matchup, that could be the ball game or at least put you in a significant hole. And despite the tools that he has, he's gotten new toys, but all the aggressive decks have gotten new toys. All the control decks have gotten new toys. So he'll still, similar to Fort Max, beat up on blue stuff. They just can't kill him fast enough. It just ain't going to happen. He's big. He does direct damage. He decreases their quantity of attacks. He does a lot of mean things.
That's why control decks have to go too tall because they need 2 relevant attackers to keep going at them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But think about, say, Sky Shadow. Sky Shadow comes out the gate. 3... They're not great attackers except for the plane initially. But say you get a card play. Or even if Metroplex blows up one of the pieces, now he's a giant attacker and they're burning the whole time. And they're an orange deck.
Kind of reminds me of Power Rangers where like they kill the monster and it's like, oh, it's not over.
Yep. And Power Sight, somebody slams whatever button they call it in that version, because I didn't know this until my kids started watching it, but there's like 50,000 Power Rangers.
Yeah,
like there's so many.
There really is.
But anyway, any of the aggressive decks right now really stress Fort Max, and you can squeak it out with the new tools. Obviously, you get more blues, you get potentially more bold 4s if you want to go as far as the lock on target, the blue plane one.
Yep.
So you can include that. It'll count as a blue for your Metroplex flips, even though it doesn't give you a blue on defense. So you get your triggers, but it's tough. If you're expecting a field of blue, which I don't think anybody is right now, I could say Metroplex or Fort Max for that matter. And I think Metroplex is a little bit better off right now than Fort Max, personally. But I'll be honest, once it started getting whooped up on by orange decks, let's just say they're not in sleeves anymore.
Okay, that's legit. That's legit.
Yeah.
It's also unfortunate because I do like Metroplex a lot, and the Triptychon just kind of literally was like this, and the ball went over his head. And
Yeah, exactly. Or just beamed him right in the face. It was just,
or that. Yep.
It's bad. On the 4th of July, I was watching the Dodgeball Championship, and there were a few Triptychons out there that were just getting clobbered.
You guys heard it here first. We're coining the phrase, you're a Triptychon when you get knocked in the head with a ball.
Hey, we're starting it. All right.
I'm totally down with it. Yep.
I'm with it.
Yep. I played against a Triptychon in round 3, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, next question. What is one of the coolest what is one of the coolest plays that you've done in the game so far, or favorite plays that you can remember?
So a lot of them, I was trying to go through my head when you told me the questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what do we got? What was cool that I played? What were the fun decks that I played? But I was thinking about what I played at events. My first Transformers event, I played this Hodgepodge Nemesis Thundercracker Flame Ward build.
Okay.
Then it became Wave 2. I was jumping around with a lot of things. Wave 3 was Blaster. Wave 4 was primarily, Galaxy was the thing until, and that's where the story's going. Sorry, everybody. But I've had the most fun playing Daring Escape.
Oh, yeah, you're that guy.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm one of them guys. But it's the plays now are a known. You know, everybody sees the Daring Escape lineup and they go, okay, I know what that's going to do. And I'm not going to say that, for me, it's cool and it's fun going through the sequence and dodging around, say, Caliburst triggers, or the game where I ended up losing this game, but I played a Shockwave opponent whose system rebooted twice, mind twisted me 2 or 3 times, all in the course of a single game. So like they went flip Shockwave.
Okay.
Shockwave gun, and
they took you down even more with the Shockwave flip.
These were like consecutive turns, so it was I had a hand of, say, 20 cards. System reboot. All right, build my hand back up. System reboot. All right, now my hand is, I'm down to a handful of cards. They would Shockwave flip, Shockwave gun, UFO, and it's like they just shredded my hand. And then I still ended the game with a ton of cards in hand. I just didn't win it. I think the coolest one was when, and again, this was in a loss, but probably the coolest thing was playing the Daring Escape deck, EMP waving my Galaxy Prime opponent who boarded into Thrust. So it was Galaxy Prime Thrust, and smashing Prime for, I think it was 27, because I just fed everything into Fire Drive.
That's the alternative win condition. You actually just go kill the guy, and then it's like, oh, okay, I win anyway. Yeah,
I ended up losing that game because 27 wasn't enough. He hit multiple energy packs.
Damn.
It was somewhere in there. Maybe he had 2 energy packs, and then I hit him for like 24. But it was like absurd amount of damage where I just flopped half my deck on the table and said, take this many.
Wow.
And it was cool because it was done so quickly, but it was just one of those, that's a real bad matchup. What are you going to do?
Yeah, with the Thrust, especially if they somehow win game 1 and then, end up going first game 3 if you win game 2. And
Exactly. Yeah, it gets real complicated real fast. Even when so I won game 1, but he ended up, game 2, he thrashed me because he's choosing to go first. In game 3, I just didn't have enough time to set up. Game 2 was where I think it was game 2 where I almost blew him up, but it is what it is. I think the coolest one is taking that combo deck that everybody hates and going, all right, well, if I can't do it the way I'm supposed to, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way and punch the crap out of Prime, and I almost did it.
There you go.
Almost.
For the next question, favorite deck you've played so far. So we've talked about 3 decks that you've coined and you've been playing a lot throughout the entirety of this game between Metroplex, Blaster, and the Daring Escape deck. But overall, what's been the best or your favorite deck that you've played with thus far?
It's funny that Blaster was my favorite up to that point. And I was like, Blaster's nothing's gonna top this.
Yeah.
And then I played the DE deck and I'm like, all right, this deck is fun. But to be honest, lately, and maybe it's because it's a new toy, I really like Quake lately.
Yeah. Which
kind of fits in the DE mold, where it's very much the game shifts. Now it isn't as much as Daring Escape, because obviously the entire win condition changes. Quake, you're still playing, okay, well, I got to get their health pool to 0 before they get mine. But it does change all of the math, all of the thinking. You have to actually pause and consider, okay, do I really want that guy dead this turn? Because am I prepared to deal with all these things?
Right.
Now, despite all that, it sounds like there's a lot of things that go on with that deck. At the end of the day, the version that I've been playing is still close to Blaster, where it's just I punch things real good.
Yep.
And basically, all right, everybody starts with 5 less hit points. That's what it amounts to. Mm-hmm. And truly, that right now, that's probably my favorite deck at the moment.
Okay. I got to ask you, will you be willing to tell us the secret of how to beat the deck?
To be honest, if this goes up before the Alpha Trion event,
okay.
One of the things that we've been looking at is supporting fire, because you can just blow up Quake.
Yep.
If you go first, you punch, and that's the vulnerability I've had going, and it kind of plays into the same vein. So if I go second and you just smash Quake on 1, X amount of damage, whatever it is, because he effectively has 15 health. He's got 8 base. He'll probably have Grax on him for 13. Then he has 2 defense when he's in the ping mode.
Right, right.
So 15 may sound like a lot, but that's including his defense, and the deck really isn't blue. So it's not that much.
Right.
So you can put some pressure on him on 1, and then hypothetically burn him out before things get really nasty.
Right.
Okay. Hypothetically, like it's tough. With supporting fire, you could just blow his backside up. And it's like I punch him on 1, supporting fire, random guy, crush him.
Do the
all right, I guess he's dead.
Bumblebee thing.
Exactly. So that's one of the things. Other than that, my version is much more orange. I know Dan and the other guys are leaning into a much more utility-based thing where it's, again, the spread on the pips, because all the cards do more important things as opposed to drawing improvised shield. You're drawing scouting mission, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I love that card, scouting mission.
Yeah, but yeah, supporting fire right now kind of keeps me up at night when I'm playing Quake.
Legit. Next question: how do you think the wave 5? How do you think that wave 5 has shaped up the metagame as an entirety? We can start with the obvious, with the blue, the unfortunate, for the blue players.
It's funny how it goes in cycles. Well, we haven't quite hit a full cycle yet, and by that I mean, so we had wave 1. It doesn't, to some extent, it doesn't matter because it's like everybody's learning.
Right.
Wave 2 is still in the same boat where it's like, all right, well, had your stuff. Here's a supplemental. Go figure it out. And it's early on, it was a lot of, okay, well, these are the best cards. I'm going to play all the best cards.
I think there's a lot left to be unexplored in wave 1 and 2. Those that like up to Origins and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we hit wave 3, it was, all right, well, it's wall-to-wall orange. Then we hit wave 4 and it's wall-to-wall blue. Now it's back to wall-to-wall orange, but it's orange-black. Right. And then do we go back to blue when we hit 6 and 7?
Right.
I'm very curious. But wave 5 has dramatically shifted things, I think, on the back of the power level of certain characters, certain cards. It's not necessarily, how do I put this? It's just the obvious ones of, the Sky Shadows, the Horribles. I mean, I love Quake, but he's also something that screams Playmate to some extent. A lot of these cards are so above and beyond that remember when we used to hear, well, we should ban Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend? I haven't heard that for a while now. It's just crickets on that front
anymore. Yeah.
I'll
take it back. No. It just evolved to Galaxy because a lot of people are so upset about Galaxy.
Fair. That's fair. But it's where I'm going with it is these sets just continue to build in power level where they are eclipsing the old ones naturally. I know you mentioned before, a number of times that you played Yu-Gi-Oh! And when I played it back in the day, it was the same sort of thing where, yes, they had a ban list. Yes, they had a restricted list at Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm talking about. And,
right. Yep.
But there wasn't a rotation, at least at that time. Maybe there is now. But the new sets effectively rotated the old ones, because the new cards were better.
Yep.
Or had more synergy or whatever. And that's kind of what I'm seeing with this. It isn't that all of wave 5 is better than all of wave 1. But there are enough cards in there that are better than wave 1, at least from a character perspective, from certain aspects, that it's like, there's no real reason to play some of the old stuff.
Right.
At least, again, competitive level, of course.
Understood. Yep. Totally agree. All right, so next question. Do you think there are enough new cards to mold a deck with the newer cards more than the old, or is it still necessary to go call back to the norm and add some new cards? And another section I'm going to add to this question is, have you seen yourself playing any cards back from maybe wave 1 and 2? I don't want to say 3 because 3 is still, I feel like, newer because Siege 1 together. But
I haven't even gotten a full year out of it yet.
Yeah.
Even though it feels like it was 100 years ago.
It really does. But then when you really look back, it really wasn't that long ago.
Right.
For example, not that it's right or wrong, but one thing I really been paying attention to is the fact that Perceptor can dig as well as he digs, and all the one-ofs that you play in the deck. I have a hard time. I've had a love-hate relationship with Reprocess lately. And then shout out to Nick Weidman. Nick Weidman reminded me of Smelt. So when he reminded me of Smelt, I'm like, yeah, I guess that could work because most aggressive decks I've been playing against, in my experience, play fusion bores, power punches, and grenade launchers. So all of those fall off. Granted, yes, when they do have a Bastion Shield on, it's going to be harder to get to their utility slot. But otherwise, Smelt actually has value in getting rid of that annoying power cell or, energy pack these days. And so with that, I was looking at cards like ramming speed again in aggressive Perceptor deck. Again, not saying it's right or wrong or whatever, but the fact that you play so many one-offs like you do, I learned that from you guys based off of fact and fiction from Magic. That you can do those type of things. So it made me think, I'm like, I don't think the one ramming speed would hurt, especially when it's on color for what I'm trying to do, slanted orange and things like that. So that's an example for me. But for you, pulling back the old cards.
I think a lot of people have forgotten about Reckless Charge. To be perfectly honest, I think a lot of aggressive builds right now are, hey, I got a ton of black pips. All right, I'm basically playing mono black, and it's.
You play against an orange deck, and it's like.
And even if now, granted, as we said before, the blue decks are hurting a bit right now, but. Again, I'm coming at this especially from a Quake perspective or a general Titan Master perspective. If I Reckless Charge, that's a huge static buff that eliminates possibilities of, say, end hostilities. I don't care how many oranges are flipped. I already got my 4. The old play of, oh, well, and this was the joke that Scott used to always say, you could play wave 1 cup. It didn't matter. If you put Grenade Launcher and Reckless Charge on and you flip 2 oranges, okay, you're punching for a lot.
I said that as well. I said the same thing. Yeah. Sometimes it don't even matter how good your deck is. Reckless Charge and Grenade just make anybody better.
Yeah, you just go, well, that guy, he's done.
It makes Krev a 10 before it flips. So
yes, and that's where it's. I've seen it missing from a lot of lists, and I'm always trying to include it myself. Now, again, the Quake player in me says, oh, I could get a cool interaction out of Quake. Like, I'll Reckless Charge this guy, kill that guy, it'll cause a ping, then this guy will die, and that'll cause, like cascading nonsense.
Sounds like such a headache.
But you don't even have to do that, even in, say, a Sky Shadow list. What if you wanted the Sky Shadow to combine at a certain time, or you just want to make him base 12 attack? You can do some mean things, and I think the early waves still have, aside from utility players, so, you'll have a random card that ends up in a sideboard slot, or it's a one-of in a Perceptor because you can dig for it. I think there are still key components to whatever strategy within the early waves that are still going to be appearing. It's some of the, putting aside the peace through tyrannies, the security checkpoints, there's still gold to be found in the early sets. And I think that's not, while we were just talking about how the new stuff sort of phases out old ones, we've seen the improved Reckless Charge in Last Stand. Like, there's probably not going to be anything in between that's going to obsolete Reckless Charge, but be not +5 like like Last Stand.
Right.
Point being is that these cards are still going to be around until Wizards decides either they rotate or do something else with them.
Yeah.
Like, you got to at least consider them.
Right, I agree. I think when Reckless Charge first came out, it was funny because I loved One Shot Stand, One Shot Fall. But then I was like, Reckless Charge, man, you got to do 3 damage to yourself after, which is so weird. How do I love One Shot Stand? It does pretty much the same thing with the 3 damage, but not hated, but I just didn't see the power in it. But then I had it explained to me by some players, especially Scott, saying, well, it doesn't matter if you're going to kill the character that you're going to attack. And I think in some decks that I've played it with recently, it was like a one-of, like a Perceptor. Like the aggressive Perceptor Sky Shadow deck, but I wasn't playing an abundance of oranges, so sometimes like that +4 and maybe like 1 orange off my flips is all I was getting. So that's probably an error in deck building. So with you saying that makes me want to potentially revisit that card, because if I'm hella orange, having that +4 from the Reckless Charge and then also my weapon just kind of blunts in hostilities. And the only other benefit that they get out of in hostilities is if they're playing a mixed deck, their oranges become blues. So that helps them, but it really doesn't matter to me because sure, you like you said, one in my but if I have Reckless Erratic Lightning or Reckless Fusion Board or something like that, even where you have your spots of blacks, it's still +7 on my guy, and that's
absolutely.
So I agree with you. So
yeah,
that's go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah. You mentioned Erratic Lightning, but there's a bunch of cards along those lines. Now, those are 2 aggressive ones, and at the moment, I can't think of any control ones, but they're out there that have just fallen out of favor, and I think it's just a matter of new shiny toys as opposed to, well, I've been playing with these for years. I know what they do. This is new and cool, but they're still good. Like they still do the same thing they always did, and maybe that scenario is what we need. Calling back to Gen Con of last year, we saw a sea of orange. Like there were a lot of orange decks, not a lot of blue ones. Same sort of thing here. Maybe we got to see what old lessons are still valuable.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Next question, kind of along the lines of how did you feel about Wave 5, but specifically the black icon. So I guess it's kind of the same question, but the presence, and we got introduced to it in Wave 3, and after 3 waves, it's finally been at its quote-unquote full power because it's the best it's ever been. It's not like they just kept sprinkling things at us. We really got some strong black cards, especially
absolutely
orange icon. What do you think about the black icon in general, and do you think it's overdone, and do you think it needs a counter? I guess I can't ask you. What do you think will happen with? I guess I can give you. You could ask. Tell me a speculation of what you think. Blue.
Yeah.
Blue, like a new icon color coming up. Or
so they did allude to another pip icon down the road, and I'm trying to remember when. I think it was pre-Wave 3. So I think it was around the time like we were told about black pips, and then they said yes, there will be more, but not for a while because we don't want to have 50 of them running around.
Right.
Kind of thing. Now they could have been referencing the tribal pips back then, but I'm not sure. We won't find out until they actually do it.
Okay.
But as far as how it's actually played out, it's interesting to me that they, and I guess understandably, are very afraid of putting too many good blue-black pip cards together because we have such a plethora of strong orange-black pips, but not a whole lot of blue-black pips, even though that threat hasn't really ever manifested. It hasn't even been close. I actually expect them to push the pure black pips even further. So, for example, when we were talking about One Shell Stand, One Shell Fall a few minutes ago, what about a One Shell Stand, One Shell Fall that's 2 and 2 with a black pip? Or something like that.
Cammy and Crash got the closest we were going to get to One Shell Stand, but I still understand what you're saying, though.
Yeah, that would obviously be worse than Cammy and Crash, but maybe it's 3 and 1 or 3 and 2, or playing around with the numbers there, or give it a tribal pip or something like that.
Right.
I think they will continue to push it, and I'm in the abstract. I like the idea because while I love Daring Escape, I'm probably like one of 4 people that play the game that like Daring Escape, let's face it. So, I completely understand that and can respect it. So I'm fine with Daring Escape going the way of the dodo, whether they ban it or it's just never playable again.
Right. And
then they bring in black pips to make, so say you're playing a mono black deck, that beats control. And then control beats aggro, and then aggro beats up
that triangle, yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't quite fit the spheres theory that Scott had way back when, and still does. But
make a new chart, Scott.
Yeah, you can do something, you can have similarities, or depending on how the core pool shapes up, that you can create those relationships, and it'd be a stable metagame where you don't auto lose as the blue deck to a mono black deck, but it's a rough matchup. Yeah. And the same for against the aggro, etc. There are ways to do it, and I think you can tell, and this is one of the cool things about the way they've inserted black pips and the way they've ramped their power level, is you can almost see what's going on behind the scenes in the design team saying, all right, now they're ready. Now the players are ready. Now they know how to deal with this. This is how they're going to do this. Right. Or, okay, we saw this work. It didn't really work, but this looked awesome. All right, let's go down that route. And you can see the evolution by the time we get the cards, which is really cool.
Cool. I like that answer. Overall, shout out to I'm sitting here daydreaming a little bit because I'm thinking about this Octone deck that I have. I have three versions of Octone, and the latest one I have is actually mono black. No, I take it back. Not it's heavily slanted black. I've never played this many black icons in a deck ever. It's not even playing Peace to Tyranny or any double of any other card, but the black ones like Contract Contingency and Dual Wield and Concealing Contrails. I really want to take hyper advantage of Concealing Contrails and make my double blacks, double blues. But of course, you have to draw that card. It's not like it's a green. So it's just another aspect that I was thinking about, and one thing I definitely made myself aware of is that it's going to struggle potentially against aggro decks. But I'm hoping that in those matchups where I was playing an orange deck and I attack you for 7 and you have 2 defense and you block. Well, now if I'm attacking you for 7, Pierce 7, I'm actually getting in for another 2. So I don't know how much that matters. The Octone deck obviously is very good with direct damage. I'm hoping the fact that it's potentially weaker and it's going to take those hits against orange deck, it's just it's another aggressive deck but on a different axis because it's not blue, so it's not defensive, but it's still aggressive because it's getting in for guaranteed damage. So I'm hoping the combination of that and direct damage is good enough to hold up against orange decks. If it's not, okay, back to the drawing board. But I'm having a really cool build and a deck profile. It may have come out before this or after this, depending on editing and time. But it seems like it's very cool. It plays Night Racer and then Fangry with Kreb. And then Octone himself. So
that's actually a really cool sounding idea. Octone's one of those ones that's always on the periphery for me, and I do like the leaning into the black pip idea. And it feels like his bounty should make up the lost ground.
Right. That's what I'm
doing. It's one of those I'd have to try it because I want to use dual wield. I really want to use that
Every
card.
Every time I draw it, I feel so powerful when I have that card. Yep.
Yeah, because I'm just picturing either dual wielding grenade launchers, dual wielding javelins, dual wielding whatever. It doesn't matter. And then you just blow up that guy, ping that guy, do this other thing. But
right.
He's always up to this point. He's always felt as though he's just a half step short. He just can't quite get there.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, I think my favorite play in the deck is Concealing Contrails because that with Night Racer turns it into a blue deck for a turn. So all with her tough that really help you and I play some blue blacks Opportune Offensive and things in there. So it's kind of cool. It feels good when you have that card in your hand because it's
that's actually a cool idea. Yeah,
it gets around belligerence. So your blues won't work, but if it's a blue black, you still get the 1 from the black. So it's like a blue anyway. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. But to our last question, and probably the most important one for anybody viewing this for for help is a tip. One tip that you can give to players while playing this game that can help them better their game.
Okay. This one's, I know it's supposed to be one. It's kind of a two-parter, but it's very much.
How many of you got?
Yeah, the general one, an overarching one that kind of sums up all of them is ask questions. There's been a lot of people who have mentioned in the Discord, who have mentioned in other groups, or have messaged me individually that have said, hey, or just commented on things that they didn't realize certain things worked a certain way, or they had this preconceived notion about thing. And then it's very much, well, hey, just ask, man. It's fine. No one's going to get upset. No one. We all love talking about the game.
Please drop the ego. Yes.
Well, and that was the second thing was just make sure that, accept what people are saying. No one is out there, because it's come up recently about, elements in the community.
Yeah.
So without digressing into it, most people, when I met a ton of new people at EI. We've obviously met a bunch of people at other events. Virtually everybody is fun to talk to, and everybody loves to, just in general, card game players love to talk about their own opinions. So, I'm no exception. So, if you ask someone, almost always they're going to be willing to volunteer some information and in some way assist you. And as a result, you will then grow. So no matter what, and this goes for just about everything I know in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know everything. So anytime, I'm always asking people questions almost to a fault. And it's just, there's always new ways to learn. And the anecdote, I think I've mentioned this on Tech Talk. I probably have 100 times because I repeat myself a lot. Yeah. I remember one of my football coaches saying this we were doing a skull session and watching tape or something.
Okay.
And he said something to start the practice, when we're going to watch tape, he said something to the effect of that he went to a football conference years ago and he saw another coach that he had respected and maybe like played against when he was playing 20 years before that. And he was a coach that won a bunch of championships in high school and blah, blah, blah. And he was at this conference and he was taking notes on this seminar on the center quarterback exchange, literally just snapping the ball. And there's this storied coach that's won tons of championships taking notes on arguably the most basic thing in the game of gridiron football.
Yeah.
Literally handing the ball from the center to the quarterback. He's taking notes on how to coach it, how to train it, how to practice it, how to execute it, etc. And my coach went up to him after. He's like, "Why are you bothering? You've already done this stuff for years." And his answer was, and it's been years since I heard the story, and I'm sure it was one of those games of telephone, but it was very much, there's always something to learn. So even if it's the most basic thing, well, why did you flip that guy on one? Well, it's a horrible deck. Okay, well, but in this matchup, is that appropriate? Like, does it make sense? Odds are yes, that's probably true. But asking the questions, if you're unsure, whoever's watching, listening to this, is worthwhile, because then you can see the thought process from in that person's brain of why they did X, why they did Y. I tend to announce a lot of things. Like, I wildly postulate and kind of think out loud when I'm playing. I know I've done that against you, where I remember one of them at Top Deck where it was way back in Wave 2, and you were playing Sentinels, as you were playing it for a while.
Love Sentinels.
And I remember, I forget what I was playing. I want to say aerial bots, but I said, it was many turns in, it was just after wheel, and I said something to the effect of, if you have one shell stand, I just lose on the spot, and I do that a lot. And it was, and you had it, so I ended up getting blown out. But my point is that I announced those things. I probably shouldn't, because that's a disadvantage. Your opponent. But I mean, at that point, like, you're a good player. You're a really great player. You would have figured it out. It's not like it was hiding anything.
I was probably sniping and like just eyeing that character. Like, nope. Character. Nope.
But after the game, I remember us talking about it, and it was, okay, well, 6 turns before that, if we had sequenced it this way, it's one of those, you have to be humble about it. You have to ask questions. You have to be willing to accept the answers, which at a certain point, it comes back to the humility where somebody's going to give you an answer. It's like, no, you just messed up. You messed up bad doing this.
Right.
And I've been that guy. I've seen other people be that guy where you get super angry about it and defensive. Like, everybody does. You're in the moment. It's like, because it feels like somebody's calling you dumb or something like that. And they're not. It's like, you're human. You make a mistake. It's okay. Take a step back. So ask questions, be humble about it. That's kind of what it boils down to.
Absolutely. I'm notorious for making either, not necessarily even misplays. Like, I'm actually notorious lately for letting my opponents kind of just do what they want. And I just assume that whatever they said is what it does. And like, sometimes I'll catch it and then sometimes I won't. And then like people on stream, like Scott on the stream for like Orlando would be like, hey, you can't do this. And it's like, oh yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah,
whoops. So it's kind of a weird effect like that.
I know what you mean.
But on the point of one shot stay, one shot fall, or any burn in general, wedge formation. Wedge formation gets on my nerves this format, because they will heal that melee character that I was planning on sniping with a Camion crash on the next turn or arm hovercraft, and then they heal it out of range. There wasn't a thing before Wave 4 when wedge formation came out, but now that card's being seen play everywhere, that's one of the most annoying things ever. I gotta just say that, because
that is one of the subtly most powerful cards in a.
It really
maybe the quietest powerful card in the history of the game. Like, all the other ones are very much, oh yeah, you one shell stain, you just straight up killed that guy, or I pieced through tyranny and blew you out, or I security checkpoint and stripped your whole hand. This one's like, well, I'll heal one and draw one, but that means you need to sink another attack in 4 turns later.
Potentially,
and like it just messes with you after the game. It's like, man, I just lost to wedge formation. How did that happen?
Like, hey, after arm hovercraft and then they heal that one off, it's like, it's just one, but you're like, damn.
That feels bad.
It really, the power of one. I keep saying that. Man, we got to have a grand podcast about that. I literally talk about that all the time, whether it's missing by one or living by one or, whatever the case is.
That's one thing.
One defense versus 2 defense.
That's one thing I'll throw in as a honorable mention for this.
Okay.
When people think of one, don't think of it as literally the number 1. And this is something that I try and do, and my brain interprets it strangely. So when I look at a character and they have 12 hit points, let's say 12 health, that's 2 to me, because in this format, a 12 health character with say 2 defense is likely to die in 2 attacks. So it's not really the 1 health, which does matter when you get granular for the burn. So it does matter, but a lot of the time assessing characters is often how many swings. So to your point, healing that 1 could have added 50 health for all it matters. You know what I mean? Because the difference between them having that 1 extra and now they're out of burn range versus them having 6 extra, still being out of burn range, but they're going to die in combat anyway.
Right.
Are effectively the same. So it's, I know that's kind of a random aside, but that's an evaluation that I usually try and do in my head in the way I break down a lot of things. And maybe it shortcuts it too much, but that comes up a lot, especially in some of these, like I've been doing a lot with Quake, where it's, okay, well, I just need to hit that break point, and now, all right, that guy's toast.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. Very much respect for that. I think one other thing I wanted to say something along the lines of when you talk about asking people for things, even just in life.
Yeah,
I gotta say, these things are pretty big. You know, they're pretty solid, but it doesn't matter. Like, I know a lot of things in the gym, but I still go to ask. I'm being conceited. I'm joking. I'm not really like that.
I was about to say, man, I haven't been in the gym in a while. You're going to have to learn me. I've forgotten a lot of things. So
yeah, let's get a workout, man. Sounds good. I'm always with that. But I always ask somebody, you know, for help with things, especially that has like the physique or whatever. That's something that I admire, something like that. I drop all ego and have no ego for that, and absolutely will ask questions. Because all it's gonna do is better yourself. There's really, you know, exactly, like comparing yourself to that guy, like putting yourself versus that guy in the gym.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, why?
Yeah, there's no shame in doing that stuff, because obviously whoever you're talking to has, like, they did the thing you're trying to do.
Right.
What's the harm in asking?
And for the last segment of this video, guys, I just wanted to make sure Vin gets his plugs in. And of course, we're going to talk about the unfortunate, news that we got last Monday in the Transformer TCG ending. But before we get into that, Vin, I want to make sure you get in your plugs and shout outs.
Awesome. Well, I'll make them quick. I got a few. As always, shout out to my wife. She's always supporting me with everything that's going on. She's a competitive card gamer, like we talked about already, and she loves this stuff too. So leading into a little bit what we're going to talk about next, she can definitely feel the pain, because we've been through the death of a few games that we've enjoyed together, so she can appreciate it as well. Shout out to all the other Vector Sigma guys. That man over there, hopefully I'm pointing the right way on his screen. Thank you for having me on the show, Stefan, but shout out to all the teammates, because being on a team for this long and for this game was awesome. It was a ton of fun. And I guess last two, shout out to WotC and Hasbro. Despite the fact of how things are ending, you brought us this game and we all loved it. And shout out to the community, because seriously, guys, it's been a lot of fun, and it was really cool, especially at EI, when we had that many people and the energy was palpable, and you could, I checked in with all my opponents after the rounds. I checked in, met a bunch of people that I knew from online. It was a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that at some point we'll all be able to get back together and play this game or other ones down the line.
Absolutely. You know, something I got to say in terms of the game ending. So for my feelings about it, to sum it up quickly, I've been part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! I've been playing since 2003, since
right.
Blue Eyes White Dragon versus Exodia versus Weevil throwing the Exodia cards off the boat, etc.
Dude, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like, I was back when I was still playing. So
yeah. I'll say you will remember that, because good old Weevil. But so I've never been a part of a card game that's died. Like, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Faithfully all the way up till 2019 or 2018-19 when I started transforming. So you know, it was new for me. I was in silence. I think when I first saw it, I read it and I just said, "Wow."
Yeah.
Wow. Like, just wow a couple times. Then I was just quiet for a minute. Then I called my girlfriend, told her, and I'm just like, that's so crazy. Like, really? Man, it's
such a weird feeling.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I wasn't surprised, but then I was like, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't like, when I got over the initial shock, it's like, you know what, I'm not surprised, especially with COVID. That's one thing that I was like, just hoping that it wouldn't, you know, but then, like, so exactly what they said in the note, that piece, you know, COVID just added extra hurdles. So I imagine we would have got wave 6 and maybe like a 7. Then even then, it would have just been a challenge of seeing how it would, like, you know, just survive afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you summed it up. When I first saw it, I mean, I mentioned this on Tech Talk. got on the phone with Scott and Dan because they told me about it.
Over 2 hours long, so it's a good bit to listen to.
Yeah, we went through a lot of stuff, but I had this pretty much the identical reaction that you did. Scott told me, at first I thought he was, I knew he wasn't joking when he said the words, but my response was, this is a joke, right? Yeah, and then we all just kind of sat there for a while because, as I said, it's a weird feeling. I'm not even sure how to describe it, where it's, yeah, you can see it if you take a step back and you think about it and you go, yes, that makes sense from a business perspective. Like, I get it. But man, does it suck outside of that. It's just, I don't even know what to say when you invest this amount of time and energy into something. Thing. Yeah. It's just, it's a project that anybody who's ever done anything in any capacity, you work real hard on something and it gets taken away from you because of things outside your control. It's just, you feel powerless. You feel frustrated. I know I was getting angry, not like ranting and raving angry, but it was more like grinding my teeth kind of angry because, man, it was awesome and it could have made it, and it just didn't.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it at that for now because, like I said, there's a whole bit on Vector's channel, so make sure you guys go subscribe still. I think to sum up that part, we're not going anywhere. There's an afterlife in the game. When my first initial shock was looking at all the product I still have back here. I have sealed boxes of Wave 4 still, just like chilling, that I forgot that I even had. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So what's going to happen with this stuff? Maybe I don't know, So that was my initial thing. And then like my initial was to like also unload on a lot of stuff, but not everything. And then I started seeing people slowly but surely talking about the afterlife and this game's been dead for this long and it's still actually alive as long as the community keeps up with it, etc.
Exactly,
so that's something to look forward to. They gave me a new breath of fresh air. We might be able to see custom cards and things a lot faster than WTC might have given to us. Like
exactly
Maximals and Predacons. Who knows? And obviously that's what I want to see the most. And I'm sure other people. But so when I say all that to say, we're going to be doing custom cards. To put it point blank, imagine we're not going to be getting the card backs like how we have now, unfortunately, but we will be able to have printouts, kind of like what we did when Wave 5 was first released. And at least that's something to be able to still preserve the lifetime of this game in the afterlife. And then also something I want to say, what is your feelings on a potential, something else I saw that can potentially hold a game together is a third party buy the game, like another third party that's not WTC.
So this is something I'll say. I'm not a lawyer, so nobody quote me on this. This is not legal advice. I don't know how this works, but my understanding is basically that you can't copyright the rules, but you can copyright the rule book. And obviously a third party, there's no shot that they're ever going to get the Transformers specific license, but it's possible that you could continue the game with the rules, I think. But again, that's something for copyright and trademark lawyers to figure out.
Right.
I think it's going to be real tough for somebody to wrestle the actual Transformers license from the grips of Hasbro or Wizards. Now, that being said, there have been other ones prior to this, like years ago. They were not anywhere near the depth and complexity and strategic value of this game, but there were other Transformers card games. I'm not sure exactly who produced them because there was a Beast Wars one, there was another one, there was a pseudo miniatures one where like the cards actually transformed because they were like little cardboards that slotted into each other.
Oh, nice.
This is going back years. So it's, I think it's possible. I think it would be really cool. I don't know who would do it though, because the other big name is, say, Fantasy Flight. And honestly, I'm not sure how well they're doing because I would assume they're in the same kind of boat if your primary thing is people sitting across from each other in the same lunchroom or break room or something, or card store for that matter, it's rough right now. So,
okay.
I'm hoping, I do hope, I think that I have faith in the community, including the efforts that we're putting together as Vector Sigma. That being said, as far as a third party, it would be cool. I just don't know what the logistics are legally, which would then play into the viability. Because if it's super hard or super expensive to get that license, that's going to factor in. Everybody's got to make their money at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at least look forward to. We're gonna do things slowly but surely, but there's a lot of people wanting to put in efforts from different spaces, and we can all put those ideas together in the end, test everyone else's cards and ideas and things, and implement and just about everybody's ideas, unless they're way too broken or whatever the case is.
There's gonna be a few of those. We have if we were the professional designers, we'd all have Wizards of the Coast shirts on or something like that.
Yeah,
so
go figure. Exactly. So yeah, just look forward. Like I said, the community is going to come together, and we're going to do some things in the afterlife. So be looking forward to that. PDF files, these things will be free. You won't have to spend any money on these things.
Exactly.
Still see some of your things a lot earlier than you were expecting, maybe, because a lot of other people also wanted to see Overlord. They wanted to see, like I said, the Maximals and Predacons, etc.
Exactly.
We'll see.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, there's a lot of potential in this. There's a lot of upside, but I said it on Tech Talk and I'll say it again. Stay engaged. Like anybody who does love this game, stay in the groups, stay in the Discords, stay on Twitter, keep following everybody, keep talking about it, because that's how something actually dies, is when nobody cares about it.
And the effort,
keep talking about it, and the buzz naturally grows on itself. Yeah, we're going to lose some people because they were either in it only for the organized play and they didn't care about Transformers, or we're going to lose people because, real life, they got other stuff that they're going to be interested in.
Right.
But the core group can still grow as long as people stay involved.
Right. And something I said on a post I just made recently, if you were going to sell your cards, I feel like you should have already had sold your cards since February. The fortunate tragedy with COVID happened, and then it seemed like immediately after COVID happened. And it's like, well, when COVID happened, and maybe I think people were in high hopes that we still somehow have tournaments. But then once they did a shutdown of everything, I think there's also, in hindsight, people were still hopeful that it wouldn't be as long as people.
Exactly. Yeah, there was a lot of hope going around, which
so even before, so let's say we're 4 months in and you can just assume, okay, this is pretty real, because for 4 months you haven't been physically going to be able to play with anybody. I feel like you should have already sold your cards at that point. Now, who am I to really say that? Nobody. But I'm just giving an example of something for you to think about. So when I say all that, don't necessarily maybe sell some of your things like I am going to. I should have had stuff sold. I'm a horrible procrastinator. But don't sell everything, especially because you have kitchen table nights. Where you want to just play with whoever, and just don't sell all the way out yet, because again, there's going to be an afterlife for this game. So we're looking forward to it. I'm hopeful. We all took the initial shock, and now we're back on board to see where it goes.
Yeah, now it's just going to be a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Where does the community stand? Because sometimes the hardest part is just staying in the game.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that literally. This game is just a figure of speech. Like, you need to stay engaged and just be there. And as simple as that sounds, that's what you need, because it's very easy for somebody to go, there's not that many people. I'm not going to be able to play in real events, and then they throw it away. Right. But if you stay engaged and you stay excited and you start, talking with people and keep the buzz going, then it's very easy to do the other way and just say, oh, well, yeah, everybody's getting together because we can't go out Friday night. Right. We're all going to get together, jump on webcam, and then play some games. There's simple ways to keep involved and keep things rolling.
Absolutely. And I mean, even think about this, probably weren't going to be anything going on next year too. Talking about 20.
Yeah.
If it takes a year to create a vaccine. I don't want to get too much into politics of COVID, but it takes a year to create a vaccine for something new that we haven't dealt with before. So in the end, COVID could probably be something that is just still around, but it has a vaccine for it, similar to the flu. The flu never went anywhere. The flu is still deadly, but we have a vaccine for it now to help you get better. So maybe that could be a potential thing, but don't look forward to anything potentially going on even until next year. So we're talking about an entire year where you have to adapt. You need to buy your webcam. You need to get on the tabletop simulator. You need to get on Octagon, whatever, in order to engage. So just think about that too. We weren't going to be doing anything for the hottest minute. And
no, I hear you.
You guys can adapt. You know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely,
Scott put it the most succinct way that I've heard yet, and it was just the way we've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 months is the way we're going to be doing it.
For a while,
potentially the next calendar year. So if you're out there, you're listening to this, you're watching this, dig in, make some decisions, because realistically, I hope to God that there's we get a miracle kind of thing, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that, at least in my opinion. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. I can only go with what I read and what I can and think about. But it could be a while.
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, but you know, we've been dealing with it for this long. It's been 6 months already, 5, 6 months. So you know, we'll get through it. Just like we get through anything else. Just you know, keep your faith up, keep your head up, and just keep it moving. And this will really test how much you really love the card games you claimed to love prior. So
yeah. Yeah, there's definitely, because it is definitely a different way to interact with it. Before it was you could go hang out with your buddies. It's like, oh, I like hanging out with these guys. I kind of like the game. Now it's, yes, maybe this will be the only interaction you get. It's got to be a Zoom call or Discord or whatever. But it is very much like you're there for a reason. It's to play the game. Do you really? We'll find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm hitting it from all different angles. The reason why this is continuing going on and on, because the more and more I think about it, saying things bluntly like, you know, quitting or you should have sold your stuff, yada, 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 just give you a different way of thinking. So hopefully I can bring you back. Hopefully Ben and Scott and Dan and everybody else and everybody else is working on everything can pull you back in. And it's not over yet. That's to sum it up. So.
Absolutely.
That's going to do it for this podcast. It's been about a good hour or so, depending on editing. Talking with you, man, and I appreciate you for being here with me, man.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
No doubt. But speaking of flexing biceps, I got to do one more thing. I got to get a good flex from you.
There, from me?
Yeah,
there ain't nothing here, man. Look at this. It's flat. It's flat. I used to play ball, and then after I stopped playing ball, it was like, nah, man, I'm eating cheese fries every day that I can get them. Damn, I'm getting the really cheese fries. I had some earlier. It was a rare treat because I can't have them all that often. It's bad.
So, well, it's third night in a row for me, but I'm gonna have some kind of like fettuccine-ish type. I have some just some baked chicken and some wheat noodles, and I'm throwing some cheese and some ranch over it, and then that's my fettuccine type thing.
I had a cheesesteak. Sorry, man.
Must be nice.
My man.
That's so many calories.
Look, you got a lot of muscle here. I got, well, it's muscle underneath this.
Hey, no,
but it's under
the camera's doing it justice. I got a lot of gut over here right now. We're good. I'm working on that right now. So,
all right. That's always the tough one. That's the tough one.
Hey, man.
All right.
I appreciate you for being here, man. I will catch you.
No problem. All right, take it easy, Stephon. Thank you.
Too.
Warrior.